So this will be important. So we see this blue line in front. That's the OL stalk. I don't know if that deals with the all reptiles have all these parts. So this OL stalk actually deals with smell and taste. I don't know if it deals with the actual sensory in front of the heat pits, but this is a bearded dragon brain, so you're not going to see that here. The red is the forebrain, and it has the dual hemispheres because the right side of the brain is imagination, the left is memory retrieval. The whole thing is memory. It holds. So this is also the part where you make decisions. The pink at the bottom, the purplish pink, that's an optic nerve. It's actually not in the eyeballs. This orange in the middle is actually the thalamus. I think this is the most underrated thing in the brain because it's the connection between the forebrain, your optic tantrum, and the optic nerve. The green is actually your optic tantrum. It's actually where the empathy lies, the modeling part. It's actually where you dissect your hearing and your sight. And so it'll go automatically into that and then kick over to make into memory. And then you have the yellow is actually their medulla. The green is the cerebellum. And well, like I said before, when you look at the medulla, the more creases it has, like it actually dives down and back up, is actually a stretching of it because it has more information from overstimulation of tactileness. The cerebellum in snakes goes backwards, like reduced limbs and actual limbless will actually go backwards, whereas right now all quadrupeds will actually grow over the optic tantrum. So it goes quadrupeds, ones that have 4 limbs, goes this way over the optic tantrum, whereas the snakes and stuff goes the opposite. So you guys get this, right? Like this is how this is. I think this is pretty basic, right? Is there any questions?
I'm gonna lose this game show already. I can guarantee it. I'm working on a phone. It looks so small. I think I'm fucked.
Yeah, I might be too. I mean, I can see the labels, Daniel, but I'm not sure depending on what type of questions you ask, maybe we'll be able to do this.
Okay. So you get a point if you can tell me something different about this brain, and you get a point for that. You get a point if you can tell me what it is. You get 3 points if you can tell me the species. You get a point if you can tell me what it's from.
Okay, so the black and white picture look like the Great Lakes, and that looks like poop.
Yeah.
Am I close?
Yeah, like it's.
How many points is that?
Give me a second. I'm gonna digest this for a moment. Oh, so you're asking if it's a 4-legged or a snake? You're asking lizard or snake, or is that what the question is?
Anything that you can see different from this to a bearded dragon. This is not a bearded dragon. So what is this species? Is it a lizard? Is it a snake? Do you see anything different about it?
I mean, is this a sea turtle brain?
No.
Oh, damn. I thought it was all full circle from the beginning, man. I thought that was the test. I hate to say this. I'm out. I don't think I'm going to get this. I mean, I can make a bunch of guesses, but like...
This is an iguana brain.
Okay.
Basically, it's basically the same thing as a bearded brain.
We got to work on your game shows, buddy. I don't think the crowd's going to like this one.
That's what I was curious about. That's why I'm testing this.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. We should have practiced beforehand. So can I ask you a question about that scan though?
Yeah.
Is that a captive bred United States bearded dragon, or is that a wild caught bearded dragon?
That's a very good question. That should be a captive bred beardy.
Okay, you know what you should do? You should take a couple days and find something that's wild caught, because I'm sure this has changed over the years, but I heard that originally in the United States, we started with like under 20 bearded dragons, and everything then went from that 20. Now, I'm sure there's been other ones that have come in since then, but originally we had a very small group that we worked with in breeding. And I also heard some of the original bearded dragons that came in the country were significantly bigger. And after years of inbreeding, they became much smaller. And I think that's the difference when you hear people talk about German giants. I think German giants are maybe more of the wild type or more that wild blood, that they haven't been so overly inbred that they became smaller.
Interesting. That makes sense.
That is interesting. Yeah. So what is this? This is not bearding.
I've seen this scan before, so it would be cheating if I just answer, because I've seen this.
Is it a ball python? Before. If he's seen it, it's probably a ball python.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yes. So we see that the OL stock is massive compared to that. And then you have the forebrain. This goes backwards. It doesn't actually lean over the optic tantrum. It actually goes backwards. You can see that there's more dip here. It's very fascinating, but all the parts are there. There's just increases and decreases.
So if you took a pastel ball python like the original one that Graziani has, that's 30 years old now, and did a scan of that one's brain, and then scanned a pastel ball python created today in the industry, God knows how many generations later, do you think you'd see any big differences?
I don't know, but it's a very good question.
Who knows? I wonder. I mean, I imagine, I wonder, I don't know if you would see structural differences, but because you can imagine humans, like, I guess that would be a question. You could say, would there be a difference between doing a brain scan of like a hunter-gatherer tribe in the Amazon, like someone who's like an uncontacted tribe, and then one of our brains? Like, would there be actual differences as far as like the anatomy? Who knows? I think they're different.
Not the anatomy, but the inside of the forebrain would probably have different connections.
So it might not. So maybe you'd have to put it into like a scanner that would show like the actual, when they show like an MRI or whatever. I'm not sure my medical
which we can't do with reptiles because they need to be sedated.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can't think.
Yeah. So this is something else. This is the last one. Guys, tell me what's different about this to a bearded dragon brain.
It's my left, but that little part in the front there, does that have anything to do with the heat sensors you were talking about for feeding, or are we still focused on the little?
I don't know if the heat sensory goes through that part of the brain, but it is the OL stock.
Okay.
So it's longer, or is it longer?
Yes. It's bigger.
Bigger.
Oh, I got ball pythons, right? I think it's Dylan's turn.
No, that's a point. That's a point for Dylan, or for you guys, both of you. I'll give you a point for that, because you both recognize that.
It was teamwork. I just took what was going on around me and went with an obvious answer.
And that's fine. That's great. This is. I'm hoping this will be how people learn better. I just need to perfect how I do this, and this is why I'm testing it.
I'll send you some questions after the episode, I promise.
Yes.
We'll, I think Dave and I will combine our points. Hopefully they get a prize together that we can share mutually.
What does this forebrain look differently than the actual bearded dragon? What's kind of different about it?
I forget.
I wish I would.
It's stretched.
Okay, run the mouse over the part that's stretched. Tell me about that little red part in the middle you have highlighted.
Yes. Not the red, not that part. The right, you have the OL stock at the front that leads right into the forebrain. It's the big thick part at the top.
Okay.
Whereas the bearded dragon was more round, this is actually stretched a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a simple man with simple thoughts, buddy. We're going to have to work out all this for the simpleton.
And that's okay. That's what I wanted to know. I mean, that is actually important to realize that, like I said, I wanted to test this so that I could start working on this and growing this. And that was a fire skink. We saw that the OL stock on the ball python and the fire skink were more than the OL stock on the beardy. And that makes sense because the fire skink's going to lick. It's going to lick more, and it's going to use that sensory more. And so it actually stretches that forebrain. And that forebrain is memory and decision making and things like that. Problem solving, imagination is in that forebrain. So now you've stretched that. And so then you have the ball python. The OL stock is so thick, it actually pushes back on that forebrain and actually makes it start to crest around the optic tantrum, kind of like a mammal, but it separates that forebrain. Where a monitor isn't going to separate, so you're stretching, so it'll look like a bearded dragon brain, but yet you stretch the forebrain because it also uses its tongue and smells, a monitor, but yet you don't have the forebrain separating around, and then that thalamus should actually head up between the optic tantrum and the forebrain, and so it allows for quicker response time. And so there's actually more emotional intelligence in a monitor than a ball python, than a snake. And
I agree with that.
That's why it's actually a neuroscience thing, and that's why it's because they basically, a monitor has more information coming into the brain and faster capability of using it, where a skink has a lot of the similars in behavior because it also has that stretched forebrain, but yet there's not as much surface between the optic tantrum and the forebrain to create faster connections. So that's the difference between a skink and a monitor. Do you have any comments on the game show? What should I do better with it?
I think one thing you could do is if you could make a presentation, because the thing is like most people are not going to come in with any of that knowledge, so it's going to be basically impossible for them to answer those questions. What you could do is like an 8 or 9 minute like little presentation on your YouTube channel and say, this is going to be the topics for the game show on tomorrow's episode. So that way your viewers could watch it, and probably the guests should probably watch it as well. And then people can be tested on their knowledge that they gained like a couple of days before from your information, or else it just becomes too difficult.
Really, that's actually a really good idea. Yeah. No, I like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
They let everybody on Jeopardy know the topics before you go on. These people aren't that smart.
See, there's always it's not a surprise. Yeah.
I like that. That's a great idea. So what were your thoughts on the game show? How could I make it better? You had some comments.
Well, first off, you got to figure out what the game show is exactly. You probably want some consistency. Maybe you're going to, like I made the joke about Jeopardy. They know the topics ahead of time. I don't know if you need to give the answer and they need to give the questions. I think with the brain breakdown, with you running down, okay, here's everything and this is how the brain works. Okay, cool. Now here's a picture of a brain. Tell me what you see. If you go in not knowing to grasp that, look at it, and know what to look for on going from a drawing to literally something that looks like a pile of shit, really hard. You can make guesses. I assume that one of them might be a sea turtle brain because you started with a sea turtle. I should have known iguanas because iguanas came up in conversation a long time, but I didn't make that connection. I think your charts need to be improved on a little bit, which I could always help you with that kind of stuff. I'm good on my phone with Photoshop and moving things around.
Yeah.
But
I just want to do something quick to test. Yeah.
No, of course. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there's a fun way of doing stuff like that. That problem is if you get a bunch of wrong answers, it takes the fun out of the game, and it's a deterrent for the people trying to give the right answer. So it shouldn't be so easy that you get it, but it should be. You got a fighting chance if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, I want people to go, oh, I know that answer. And I want to bring famous people on like Adam Wickens and people like that to where people want to see it. And then they'll start putting more of them, like raise their self-esteem. I don't want people to think of the guest as stupid, but I want the people at home to go, I know that increase their self-esteem.
Well, again, so coming into this conversation today, I knew that you and Dylan were more book smart on the topic. I knew that you guys had a better understanding of it than I did, for sure. I just took relatable things for me in that conversation, relating it to certain things I've seen in animals. I showed you my perspective on what I heard coming out of your mouth and what I've seen, which either agreed with what you were saying or maybe put up a little bit of a fight.
And that's perfect. That's actually how we need to be talking about this stuff. That is so important to break that down.